We have breaking news from Ottawa this hour. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced that Mark Wiseman will be Canada's next ambassador to the U.S. Wiseman is a former investment banker and pension fund manager and longtime friend of Prime Minister Mark Carney's. He will replace Kirsten Hillman, who announced earlier this month she would end her role. Carney's office says Wiseman will take on the post in mid-February. He'll be tasked with leading negotiations on the review of the CUSMA free trade agreement with Mexico and the U.S. Carney says Wiseman brings immense experience, contacts, and deep commitment at this crucial time of transformation of our relationship with the United States, adding he will help advance the interest of Canadian workers, businesses, and institutions while building opportunities for both Canada and the United States. All right, we're joined now by CTV's Colton Praill in Ottawa. Colton, not a surprise for anybody who's been anticipating this announcement.
No, this is a name that was rumored for quite some time. Essentially, since Kirsten Hillman announced that she was going to be leaving the position, this has been the name that's been floating around Ottawa. And the reasoning that you point out there, the financial experience, the knowledge of economic markets, the ties to business both in Canada and the United States, sources telling me those were all big drivers of why Mark Wiseman is taking over this role. He will have a significant part to play when it comes to the renegotiations and the review of CUSMA in 2026. This is something that's going to be critical to his role. He is not the only person that is going to be involved in those. Dominic LeBlanc, the Prime Minister himself, both going to be instrumental and have significant roles to play in those renegotiations. But Mark Wiseman is joining that team. It's also important to point out Kirsten Hillman, in her departure, announced she would be available to that team as well should they need her assistance. To your point about them having a pre-existing relationship, sources telling us that is something that also influenced this decision. The importance of having an ally that the Prime Minister feels he can trust in such a significant diplomatic position is a big reason for why you're seeing Mark Wiseman as the name that's been put forward. This is largely considered the most important diplomatic position in the country. And so that financial background, that economic background, and that personal background all coming into play here. Of course, it wasn't just at BlackRock, for example, where he made a name for himself. He was also leading the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board and the Alberta Investment Board. And so there is a history here, both in private and public dollars, that has really made him a significant candidate and was a big part of the driving reasons why he's moving into this position in the new year.
But for Colton, for people scrutinizing his CV, certainly there is no political and no diplomatic experience on that resume. The weight is being put on his certainly business elite experience right at the top of the system in Canada and internationally. But that just shows where the importance lies with this role and with trade being at the forefront.
It's a pattern that we've seen with Mark Carney at this point, right? You look at his natural energy and resources minister. It's Tim Hodgson, another financial background who didn't have public service experience, stepping into one of the key roles in this government, who has been a very close advisor to Carney. And we have seen how that's played out. He's had a significant role to play in bringing over some MPs, Michael Mah, the most recent example, into the Liberal caucus. And so it's not to say that they cannot do politics, but certainly it is a challenge. The Prime Minister's office will counter that by saying, look, he has the negotiating experience. He's been in these boardrooms. He's been at these tables before. And really, that's what he's there to do in the U.S. It's much more focused on this CUSMA review than any other portion of the portfolio. The other important thing to point out when it comes to criticism of this appointment, and certainly you'll hear it from the opposition, is that Mark Wiseman is the founder of the Century Initiative. Now, that's something that's not been talked a lot recently, but it was discussed during Mark Carney's push for leadership. This is an initiative that looks to grow Canada's population to 100 million. It's something that we've seen the opposition really push back on, especially as immigration has become such a hot-button issue. And so expect that to rear its head as well. More questions about what the Prime Minister's immigration plan will look like in the future and whether or not this signals pressure inside his inner circle, so to speak, to shift gears on what has so far been a reduction to immigration numbers that we saw under Justin Trudeau, a continuation of that curtailing we saw at the end of the Trudeau years.
Although I think the anticipation certainly will be the focus will be on trade and trade itself for quite some time, and probably not immigration coming from the Ottawa, rather coming from Washington. All right, thanks for that, Colton. Appreciate your insight. CTV's Colton Praill reporting from Ottawa for us.